Watch out, demons are coming. Run, sleep, hide, spirits, ghosts, hide, demons, hellhounds, ghosts, demons are coming.
Welcome home, my little hellhounds. Tonight we have 6 scary stories to sink our hellish teeth into. If you're new, it would be awesome if you could subscribe, and don't forget to like the video, as this really helps the channel. Also, make sure to click that bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. If you have any stories you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares. I will put the link in the description, and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, let's get right into it. The Man from the Burnt House, posted by BlackCat1206. I was about 6 or 7 years old. We were on the school bus going home. We stopped to drop off my best friend, as the assistant was undoing the safety clamps on my friend's wheelchair to get her off the bus. There was a loud commotion from the house next door. It's worth me mentioning that we all knew the area well, and we all believed, from my friend living next door, that the house was abandoned for many years. It was creepy, burnt out, and grimy on the outside. The garden was so overgrown with weeds and tall grass, you could not see the path, and the gate was almost off its hinges. The commotion came from a very dirty, unkempt, deranged sounding man who suddenly just appeared out of nowhere and started to run at the open-end bus. He had something shiny in his hand, and he was ranting insanely. The back was down, as the assistant and driver were just about to put my friend on the lift in her wheelchair to take her to the front door. The man tried to get on the back of the bus via the lift, but obviously, as the bus was full of young disabled children, the driver and assistant weren't letting that happen. They quickly raised the lift and shut the doors. The man, frustrated by this, went around the sides of the bus and banged loudly on the windows, scaring us very badly. We had to stay locked in the bus until someone, probably a neighbour, called the police. Now, the really creepy thing was, by the time the police arrived, there was no sign of the man at all. It was like he disappeared as fast as he appeared. The police looked for him in and around the house, but they didn't see anything of him. They spoke to the driver and assistant for some time and waited for my friend to be taken to her front door. And until we drove away, we never did find out who the man was, but I can still remember the incident like it was yesterday. The first time that I died, posted by Freddie Gran. It started out as a normal day in school, but it would end in the most abnormal and horrific age. Robin always had a hard time in school. He was fat, unathletic, awkward around girls. He stared at their tits and asses, but could not talk to them. He could only stutter if he even muttered up enough strength to do that. Even worse, his family was poor. Well, his mum anyway. 3 kids to feed and no father to help. We'll do that. But worst of all, he was black. Being black in our school was not easy. Our school was full of bigots, racists, and neo-Nazis. They did not like any black people, but blacks with white names least of all. Robin was carrying a huge stack of books like usual. And like usual, I am one of the prettier and self-proclaimed popular girls. Funny how that works, that you can be popular by being an asshole that no one really likes. You could see he wanted to talk to her, but like usual, he froze up. Hey, Cindy, was the most he could mutter up, stuttering like usual. Hey, Robin. She mocked him in return, and all her friends started giggling. What a total loser. Look, you can see tears in his eyes. Emma, another pretty blonde white girl and co-bitch in charge of making life hard for nerds and losers and other unfortunate kids, joined in the mocking again. This was nothing out of the ordinary. It was just business as usual. A teacher walked by, Miss Rowling, an ugly old lady with huge glasses, but she did nothing to help the boy. Sadly, this was also usual. God, I wished I had helped him, told them to stop or something. But sadly, I was too insecure. I was afraid they would start mocking me, or that was my excuse, at least. Hell, I was an insecure teenager, just trying to fit in, so don't judge me too hard. Alex and Benny, 2 huge jocks, had determined that the poor boy had not suffered enough. Alex was a basketball player, standing over 2 meters tall, and had some muscles to boot. He knocked over Robin's books and held his arms behind his back. Benny was not a fat slob, but he had huge arm muscles he boxed Robin right in his chest, leaving the poor black kid gasping for air. Sadly, this again was usual. But what happened next was not. Robin opened his backpack and took out a Tech 9 submachine gun. He returned the one punch to his chest with a burst of 6 bullets into the bully's fat stomach. What the fuck? Hey, we were just... Joe. One shot straight into Alex's brain ended the bully's sentences and his life at the same time. Next was, of course, the girls. Cindy got hit right between her huge tits, and Emma right in her pretty baby blue right eye. The rest of the girls tried to get away, but Robin shot them in the back as they were running. Next was the teacher, Ms. Rowling. She got it in her neck. Next was Pontus, a kid standing next to me. He got shot and his blood spattered on the wall behind us. And next the boy aimed his weapon at me. I never did. Nothing, I stuttered, afraid for my life, and with a good reason too. I know that's why I hate you most of all. He shot me, and that was the first time I died. I woke up in here with the other dead kids, 25 in all, including Robin. He shot some more kids and then one police officer before committing suicide. We are all here now. School, shooter, teacher, policeman and me. There is a computer in here with a huge screen covering a wall, all sorts of weapons. It is showing an image of what looks like a devil-horned monster or demon of sort. It is telling us we need to work together and kill this thing and any others for a chance to come back to life. That's my story of how I died the first time. When is your time up? Posted by Freddie Gran. I came home and found both my mother and my father brutally murdered, hacked into pieces. I was of course shocked and surprised, but I should not have been. After all, today was 2020, 11/24th, and the clock was 19:30. I was looking at our old family heirloom, an old clock that showed year, month, day and time, but not the current time. Oh no, the death clock showed you the exact moment of your death. I had never really believed in it, but my father had. It had predicted the exact time of death of my grandfather and grandmother, both dead in a car crash. I had always suspected that my grandfather went insane with his obsession with the death clock and killed himself and my grandmother at the time it was predicted. But now the clock was 2 for 2, and there was no way in hell that my father had murdered both Mom and himself, and after that hacked them both to pieces. I walked over to the clock and pressed a button like my father had instructed me to all those years ago. All the pointers began spinning around quickly, and a strange song began to play. After a while, all the pointers stopped and indicated a date and time: 2100 11/24th 1930. Whoa! Another 80 years from now. I was only 20 years old at the time. I would live to be 100. The world was my oyster. 2025 11th 24. I have been living large, gambling at casinos, doing tons of drugs, knowing I would never overdose and die like so many friends I have lost in these short years. I started playing Russian roulette. You know, 2 guys, 1 6-shot revolver, loaded with a single bullet. You take turns holding it against your own heads and pull the trigger to see which one of you will be the unlucky one to lose and shoot your own head off. Of course, it was never me. Mob bosses started to take an interest in how lucky I was. They wanted to learn how I cheated the systems, but I could not teach them. I got a few punches in my face, and then I agreed to do some dirty work for them. This fit me like a hand in a glove. Armed bank robbery, shootouts with other gangs. I even worked as a hitman a few times. 2030 11/24th. Another 70 years to live. I am working for the Renes, one of the 5 crime families of Italian mobsters in New York. We are settling the score with Don Mario Corleone, an opposing crime boss. I think he might have been behind the murder of my parents. We already killed his brother Luigi. Me and Johnny was ducking behind cover, but as usual I remembered I had no need to. I rushed out into the fire of shots, friendly and hostile, both. None of them would graze me anyway. I emptied my 6-shooter Magnum revolver straight into the faces of 6 men. I was no great shot, never had been, but at point blank range it was impossible to miss. Well, for me anyway. Anyone trying to shoot me would somehow miss, have their weapon click like it was empty, or even explode in their hands. Johnny always told me I had the devil's luck. As far as I was concerned, he might be just right. Johnny and the boys came running after me. The Corleones shot down half of my guys with fire from Tommy guns, the famous machine gun used by old school gangsters and bank robbers. Johnny walked to me, covered in blood and guts, and even some brain matter from his fallen friends. I just stood there smoking a Cuban cigar, reloading my revolver without a care in the world. Wow, You really do have the devil's luck, boy, Johnny told me. Yes, me and the boys never understood how you could just rush into enemy fire like that. And look at you now, standing here, with half our boys dead, without a care in the world, smoking like it is nothing to you. Some of the boys are saying you made a deal with a demon. Freckled Frankie told me. I had to watch myself and not let anybody learn about the death clock. Sometimes when I was out partying with girls, I talked too much. When I was high and drunk, I had to kill a few just to make sure they did not talk. It was nothing, girls come and go in the Big Apple, but I could not let Johnny or Renee find out. If Frankie's luck kept up with him, I have nothing to worry about. He would be dead sooner or later and would have no chance to open his ugly mouth and yap about it. We butchered every last one of the Corleone's men, lost most of ours, but I did not give a fuck. Having the devil's luck makes one a bit narcissistic and nihilistic, I suppose. It was just me, Johnny, Frankie and Mario Corleone for the final showdown. Corleone took out a revolver and shot straight at my head. Somehow it swerved and went into Frankie's left eye instead, instantly killing him. Takes care about that problem, I thought to myself. Mario wanted to try again, and this time the revolver exploded in my hand. Me and Johnny spent the next few hours cutting off his body parts, fingers, toes, feet, legs, hands and arms. We asked repeatedly who killed my parents. Always the same answer. Renee. That fucking big nose motherfucker. I would fuck him up really good. I put Corleone out of his misery. Bullet through the brain. 2031 11/24. Spent on year investigating. Got to make sure before the final confrontation. All the evidence pointed to him, Mr. Alfredo Renee, the big-nosed mobster, my boss, was responsible for my parents' murders. It went just like last time. Johnny cut him up and Renee admitted my parents owed him money, so he had a hitman sent for them. Johnny threw Renee out of the penthouse window on the top floor of a skyscraper. Not much was left of Renee after he hit the pavement. He now looked like the meat he liked to eat with spaghetti. Nice work, I told Johnny, and I took over as the next crime boss. Sure, some guys did not like it and tried to kill me, but they had no success, and I let Johnny cut them up, burn them, hang them high, drown them, or whatever he could come up with. I only wished he did not kill Big Nose Renee so soon. I wanted to know the name of the hitman he had sent to kill my parents off. We paid the cops off like we always did for the murders. They never came looking for my boys. The next few years, a bloody gang war broke out in the city. Tons of shootings and explosions and murder, but I still had the devil's luck. 2040 11/24. I was now ruler of the only crime family in New York. All opposition had been wiped out. I had another 60 years left to live. Sometimes I wondered if I should use my power for good, like Superman, Spider-Man, or Batman. It was a funny and strange thought. I guess it was too late for that anyway. Johnny came into my office with a smile on his face. I found your parents' killer. Really? Who was it? Me, of course, you dumb fuck. He punched my face with brass knuckles, crushing my nose. I pulled out my revolver and tried to shoot his face off, but it exploded in my hand, leaving me with no fingers. Ha ha, I used your stupid clock at your parents' house. You can't kill me. Oh no, that was not good. I must have talked too much again. And now he knew. Well, maybe I cannot kill you, but you can't kill me either. I punched him with my left fist. Oh, believe me, I don't intend to. He broke my left arm, then cut my tongue out, chopped off my tongue, my family jewels, ears, nose, legs, arms, and even cut out my eyes. I was now limbless, blind, and almost deaf. He threw me out of the window. 2041 11/24. Johnny is visiting the hospital, as he does every day. He pays to keep me alive. The nurses and doctors want to pull my plug, but unfortunately, I know they never will. I got 59 years left, after all. The doctors and nurses think I am just a vegetable, but I am aware somehow. Johnny seems to know this. He comes here every day to tell me about the women he had sex with. He wish he could show me, but sadly, I am blind. He tells me about my old friends, and now he has found them and murdered them. About my old girlfriends, how he fucked them and assaulted them, beaten them, killed them, and I can do nothing about it. Sometimes he plays recordings so I can hear them scream. He tells me he will live for another 60 years. He knows I have 59 years, so he can come here every day for the rest of my so-called life to torment me. 59 years. He laughs at how stupid I was. The clock just shows you that you cannot die, but you can get hurt. I wish I could scream, but I have no tongue, no voice, and I am going to be like this for another 59 years. I think I'm going insane. Posted by Jisa Ren. I've had a few paranormal encounters throughout my life, but I am having trouble accepting I really saw something. Let's start with the first. Before I can remember, my mother told me about this. I believe I was 3. I told my mother there was a woman telling us to get out of her house. My mother was alarmed, but somehow solved the situation by telling the woman off. No, she could not see her, and I'm not exactly sure what she did. The previous owner did die in the house, to my knowledge. Next, I think I was about 8 when I started seeing this figure that would pass the windows from outside. It seemed to follow me. I went to my friend's house. We were playing in the basement. I looked up and saw the hooded figure passing by very slowly. That was the last time I saw it. Next, I was probably around 9 or 10, sitting on the couch in my living room with a friend. We were talking and the TV was off. She told me to look into the corner of my room, where I saw something really odd. It was a tall figure just standing there, but it looked as if it was in the middle of materializing. It's hard to explain. It was barely there, but visible. We stared at it for a long minute. Then it suddenly vanished and appeared in front of the couch where we were sitting, causing us both to jump back in fear. When we collected ourselves, it was gone. Next, this one is short. I was probably 13 or 14. I was getting ready for school when suddenly I heard someone say "shh" in my ear. I turned around, but nothing was there. Next, I don't know how old I was. I was walking down the stairs and I saw a hand come up and try to grab me. I freaked out and ran into the kitchen. Later that night, I went to go upstairs. The stairs are right next to the opening to the dining room, and I saw a figure of what looked like a girl with long dark hair crouching on the floor. It almost looked like she was trying to look under a bed for something. A bed that was not there. It freaked me out, and to this day I look behind me while climbing the stairs. Next, this happened about 2 years ago at Thanksgiving. This needs a little backstory. My dining room in my house used to be a bedroom. We remodeled the whole house. No one walks through the dining room, whether subconscious or not. While we were sitting, I was in a spot where I could look through the hallway into the living room. Out of the corner of my eye, I see movement and look to see a tall black figure in the shape of a man walk into the living room and out of sight. I get up and look in there, but there is nothing there. The figure felt like the same one I saw on the couch with my friend. Am I going insane? Or did I actually see all of this shit? Bell Street House Happening, posted by Shit Winds Are Calling. I have to do a bit of a backstory before telling my experience to explain better, but here goes. I was in a foster home for boys ran by the church. It was a big 2-story house, 4 boys and usually 2 social workers on at a time. The house had been raised, underneath was all new, and upstairs was renovated, an office, kitchen, art room, and one room where upstairs and downstairs was all the rooms and a bathroom. The eldest boy lived upstairs, and he would invite me upstairs to play PlayStation games and chill. On some of these occasions, the cupboards would rattle, and he'd say it was haunted, but he was a notorious bullshit artist, so I just thought he was playing tricks. As time went on, more stuff would happen, like everyone would be downstairs, workers included, watching TV together, and you would hear small footsteps running across the wooden floor upstairs, and the workers themselves didn't like going upstairs to the office by themselves. So it wasn't just us kids imagining things. Cut to cyclone season, and the boy upstairs had to move downstairs temporarily for safety reasons, and said I could take the room after the cyclone cleared up. I did think he was being a bit of a pussy, and things started happening after a week or so, so I just had this horrible feeling of being watched all of the time. So I'd start saying prayers when it got too intense, and it just got worse. One night I went to sleep and I was having a dream. I was in the art room opposite my bedroom, and one of the workers, who was an old Aboriginal lady, came running in and started screaming, "We have to go, we have to go." As we turned to the door, an exact replica of her was standing at the door with pure red eyes, and the door slammed shut. As it slammed shut, I wake up. I can't move an inch, and I get a feeling that something is at the end of my bed, and I'm petrified. But that is an understatement. I feel like I'm going to die, and I shut my eyes and start to pray. As soon as I say God, I can move my head, so I instantly look up to see what is at the end of my bed, and something slams it back down. And as that happens, I can move my body, and I just bolt for the door. Something slams the wall as I'm running through the door, screaming bloody murder. I never slept in that room again, and the manager had a priest smoke and bless the house as well. I've had other experiences through the years, but not as intense as this. Let me know what you think. The Monster Whisperer. Submitted by BlackCat1206. The group of people standing on the doorstep were watching him hard. Well, how can I help you? He had waited for someone to announce themselves for several minutes and was getting slightly irritable by the absence of any sign of introductions. That and the fact that he and Livia were just about to sit down to eat when they knocked on the door. "You, Pasha?" a tall dark-haired man asked gruffly. There was a movement behind him. Livia squeezed herself through the small gap between the door frame and her father's legs, then looked down so she could clearly see his lips. "Liv, get inside the house now. Go on, start eating." Livia looked at the group of strangers on their doorstep, then up at her father and signed, "Don't be too long, dinner will get cold." Then she pushed past her father again. "I asked you a question. Who is asking and why?" The dark-haired man looked a little uncomfortable and embarrassed. "If you are Pasha, we might have some work for you. Actually, we could do with your help." A short woman with red hair in a ponytail talked over her companion, to the obvious annoyance of him. Ignoring his glare, the redhead continued, "We are in a little bit of bother. We were told about your abilities, and that you might be willing to help us for a price." She looked at him with a slight air of desperation, then remembering herself, corrected it to feigned confidence. "I'm Pasha, but I'm not working at the moment. I'm afraid you might have wasted your time and efforts." "At least hear us out." The dark man spat out the words, barely able to hide the panic and fear in his voice, with a paper-thin layer of anger. "DJ sent us," the redhead blurted out hurriedly. "He said you were a monster whisperer." He smiled mirthlessly. "Did David tell you I was a monster whisperer?" The woman glared at him, not appreciating his mockery. He, feeling a little ashamed of himself, changed his tone slightly and said, "My cousin David has always been slightly theatrical about everything. I don't like that term. Makes me sound like a freak show. I prefer just to call myself a freelance private eye. Look, if you're serious, come back in the morning and we can talk about it properly, okay?" The group of people hummed and murmured together, like a hive of bees. Finally, the dark-haired man stepped forward. "All right, that'll be fine. Is there anywhere we can stay tonight?" "There's an inn just around the corner. It rents out rooms all year round. Come back about 10 tomorrow morning and I'll be free." With that he said goodbye, and shutting the door, he went to the landline phone, dialed a number. "Maya, it's Pash. I need a favour." Hanging up, he went to the dining table where Livia was waiting, sat down and started to eat. The Monster Whisperer, Part 2. "You have everything, baby?" Maya knelt in front of Livia. so their daughter could see her lips clearly. Livia nodded and sighed. Why can't I go with Dad? Then looked up at Pasha and continued. I thought we were on holiday. We were going to stay at the farm. The child was indignant at her father's sudden change of plans, but happy to see her mother, her stepfather Marcus, and her baby brother Will. It was her choice to stay with her father when her parents separated, but Livia was still very close to her mother and loved her very much, and had a comfortable, familiar relationship with Marcus. She absolutely adored Will. It was the principle, though. She thought her dad changed plans every 5 minutes without consulting her at all. We thought of taking you and Will to the beach for the weekend, Marcus mouthed. Livia sighed. Really, yeah, we can explore caves again. Dad, you will come back, won't you? He looked at her and said, I always come back, don't I? Livia contemplated the question for a moment, then answered, Yes, you do. Be careful, Dad. I love you. I love you too, kid, he said, looking directly at her, then folding her into his arms, holding her tight. Shall we go? Maya said, taking her daughter's hand. As Marcus helped Livia into the car, Maya pulled him to one side. Listen, I'm not going to lecture or hassle you. You never take the advice anyway. You take care. Hear me? Remember, you have a family and she needs her dad more than you need this scabby job. He couldn't help but laugh at this phrase. It was pure Maya, he said. Yeah, I know she does. I will. I am always careful. I do this for her. You do this 'cause you're a big kid, Pash. I ain't going into one anyway. Just take care. She hugged him and kissed his cheek lightly, then got in the car. As he waved his daughter off, he felt the familiar, excited, intoxicating feeling rising up inside him that he always got before a job. A what? He looked incredulous at Molly, the redhead. Are you pulling my chain? Molly glowered at him and in a low, irritated voice said, Yes. I absolutely love wasting my time and energy travelling over 50 miles to some backwater dump just to search for some poncy bloke called Pasha Jerome in order to play a massive, elaborate hoax on him. She spat out the last sentence with so much malice he flinched back slightly. Easy, Mole. Jimmy, the tall, dark-haired man, said, also looking slightly uneasy. It may seem a bit far-fetched to people who haven't seen it. He's supposed to be an expert, Jim. He's supposed to be open-minded about things like this. People go on about his abilities enough, for heaven's sake. He looked at her apathetically. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get my head around the concept of a... He cleared his throat, psyching himself up to say the word. werewolf roaming a council estate at night on the outskirts of London. I said werewolf type creature, actually. Ah, Jimmy, we're wasting our time here. Come on, let's go. Jimmy looked at Molly with alarm. Mole. The Molly. Wait up. Jimmy looked at him, pleading to urge Pasha. I'll come. He called out hurriedly after Molly. Molly turned round. Thank you, Pasha. The Monster Whisperer, Part 3. Pasha felt a distinct chill as he got out of the car and stepped into hard grey concrete behind him, Jimmy and Molly. The deserted car park should have been packed full of vehicles belonging to the residents of the 3 huge blocks which loomed above them ominously, almost as if the trio of decrepit buildings themselves were expecting them. Where are all the motors, Jimmy? Pasha deliberately hushed his voice, without even knowing why. The chill came again. Come on, quickly, move, Molly barked, but her voice had more of a panicked, desperate tone to it than that of an impatient irritation. You're scared, he thought to himself. You're terrified of something or someone. Now, what made him use that word, someone? That chill made an appearance again. Yeah, okay, right here, Molly, Pasha said in a slightly over-casual manner, and quickened his pace. When he was level with Molly, by the gigantic main entrance doors of the flats, he touched Molly's arm and said, genuinely curious, What are we doing here, Molly? I mean, why here? Why the hurry? Evidence, Molly snapped in the handle of the flat's main doors and furtively looked around. You what? What do you mean? Pasha asked as he felt an ice-cold gust of wind against his back, strong enough to make him look over his shoulder. Nothing. You're getting paranoid, mate. He chastised himself for being so jumpy. Evidence of the beast. Now, please, can we go up? It's getting darker by the second. Molly shivered and glanced around nervously. Without saying another word, Pasha held open the heavy entrance to the block of flats for Molly to step inside, before closely following behind her. There were 3 never-ending flights of stairs, which echoed eerily when they ran up them, and Pasha, who regarded himself as a healthy, fit 35-year-old, had to pause halfway up to catch his breath, while on the landing between the 2nd and 3rd flights, 3 young children, roughly the same age as Livia, ran past, and Molly called after them. Alex, Lucy, I want you indoors in 5, yeah? Michael, you should go in soon too. All right, Mum, the girl said. Her little brother just stared at Pasha and sucked his fingers. Hello, mate. You all right? Pasha looked down at Alex. Come on, we live on the 3rd floor, Molly said, and gently pulled him by the arm. The hallway of the small flat was pitch dark until Molly flicked the light switch, leaving the hall bathed in bright warm glow of a 40-watt bulb. "Come to the kitchen, it's warmer there," Molly said, and Jimmy let in the two kids who had returned a few minutes after they got in, deadbolting the door behind them. Molly busied herself, first by boiling the kettle, then warming a few tins of tomato soup up in a very worn-looking saucepan, and while Jimmy cut and buttered bread and sliced thick wedges of cheddar, Molly made tea and fetched several folders of official-looking documents and newspapers clippings. As their two children ate their supper in the small but cosy living room, Jimmy and Molly sat down with Pasha at the dining table. After they had finished their second cup of tea, they cleared away the cups. "You wanted evidence. We've got evidence," Jimmy said morosely. The Monster Whisperer, Part 4. Daily News, 12th of August 1988. 7th victim of the Shakespeare Close Creeper. Full story on page 1 to 5. The body of a 21-year-old man who is yet to be publicly identified out of respect for the victim's family was found at the bottom of a stairwell in flat B2. The body was discovered by single mum Ashley, who told us, "It was a real nasty shock. I was taking the dog for a walk with the baby in the buggy when I saw what I thought was a bundle of clothes. It turned out to be another body. That's the 7th one so far. It ain't safe here no more. I'm moving back to me mum's." The 7th so far, a grim claim to fame. The other 6 victims have been random. Different ages, genders and races, with no concrete demographic patterns at all. Victims between the ages of 8 to 74. Men, women and children, and alarmingly even pets. People from every ethnic background, reflecting the diverse but mostly working class community of the area, further feeding the rumours that the killer is a psychopath maniac set on carrying out a grisly, bloody reign of terror without rhyme or reason. The entire West London Council estate has been left in a state of paranoia and panic, where the old are afraid to go out. Parents won't let their children play outside, and the whole estate has enforced on itself an unofficial curfew of sundown, which all comply with without question. The youngsters of Shakespeare Close Council Estate have a new boogeyman to haunt their dreams: the Creeper. The head detective investigating this gruesome case, DCI George Burke: "My people and I are doing everything possible to put a stop to these heinous, horrible murders. I am speaking on behalf of all the officers working this case, that we won't be satisfied. We won't stop until we have the depraved, sick monster who is responsible for these shocking crimes and for holding this good community to ransom in our custody, under lock and key." Not everyone is reassured or convinced by the strong language of DCI Burke. Monica Grammer, a local resident: "It's disgraceful the way we are being treated, ignored, abandoned. I have been on the phone every day to the police, the council, even our local MP. Nothing. They don't want to know, and I'll tell you why. We are poor. They think we are scum. They have been waiting to demolish these flats for years now, and the fact a nutter is running around butchering us is a blessing to them. If it was the private estate up the road, the place would be swarming with police. We would have 24-hour protection. They couldn't even be bothered to turn up until 4 hours after we reported the last one. The poor bloke was just lying there. We couldn't even cover the body so the little ones wouldn't see. Disgraceful. On hearing what DCI Burke told us, Mrs. Grammer said, "I've never heard so much rubbish in all my life. It's just more whitewash." Whatever the truth is, it is clear that the estate and the surrounding local area is being terrorized by a foe that lives and hides in the dusk and shadows of the August nights, stalking its prey and relishing the fear that it creates. It acts like a malicious, malevolent, supernatural wraith pouncing from the darkness, but the aftermath of death and destruction that it leaves behind could only be made by a living, breathing, flesh and bone predator. The only question on anyone's lips around here is, when will the Shakespeare Close creeper strike again? Well, that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. If you would like more parts to the Monster Whisperer, then comment down below. If you have any scary stories yourself you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares, and don't forget to like and subscribe. This really helps the channel. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.